Amara Johnson had learned early in life how to make herself small. Not because she was weak, but because the world seemed more comfortable when she didn't take up too much space. She was a black woman raised in a modest neighborhood where dreams were often whispered instead of spoken aloud. Her mother cleaned houses, her father left when she was 10, and Amara learned responsibility before she learned confidence. Still, there was something in her eyes, quiet strength mixed with dignity that no hardship could erase. Every morning, Amara took the same bus to work, clutching her worn leather bag as the city rushed past her window. She worked as a private event coordinator for a high-end catering company, organizing luxury dinners and elite gatherings she could never afford to attend herself. She wasn't bitter about it. She believed in honest work. But deep down, she wondered if life had more planned for her than serving champagne to people who barely looked at her twice. One evening, everything changed. The company was hired to manage an exclusive charity gala at one of the most expensive hotels in the city. Amara arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress, hair neatly pulled back, clipboard in hand. As she walked through the ballroom, giving instructions to staff and double-checking details, she noticed a man standing alone near the window. He wasn't loud or flashy like the others. He wore a tailored navy suit and watched the room with calm focus. As if he didn't need to prove anything to anyone, that man was Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel was a self-made millionaire, a tech investor whose name often appeared in business magazines. He had grown up poor, slept in his car during his early 20s, and built his empire through relentless discipline. Wealth had given him access to everything except genuine connection. People laughed too hard around him, agreed too quickly, and praised him too often. He had grown tired of it. When Amara approached him to ask if he needed anything, she spoke with professionalism, not admiration. No nervous smile. No flattery. "Sir, your table is ready. Please let me know if there's anything you need during the event," she said. Already turning to leave. Nathaniel blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you," he replied, studying her. "You seem to be the only person here who isn't trying to impress me." Amara paused, surprised by his honesty. She met his eyes calmly. "I'm just doing my job." That was the moment something shifted. Throughout the night, Nathaniel found himself watching her, not because of her beauty alone, but because of the way she moved through the room with confidence and grace. She handled difficult guests with patience, corrected mistakes without blame, and treated everyone with the same respect. Whether they were donors or servers. Before the gala ended, Nathaniel approached her again. "You handled this event impressively," he said. "Have you ever considered running your own company?" Amara hesitated. People rarely asked about her dreams. "I've thought about it," she answered carefully. "But thinking and affording are two different things." Nathaniel smiled, not amused but impressed. "That's honest." He handed her his card. "If you ever want advice, call me." No promises. Just a conversation. Amara accepted the card, unsure if she ever would. Days passed. Then weeks. She stared at the card more times than she could count, arguing with herself. Men like him didn't enter the lives of women like her. And yet, something told her this was different. Finally, one evening after a long shift, she called. Their first meeting was simple. Coffee, no assistants. No luxury, just two people talking. Nathaniel listened more than he spoke. Amara spoke about her upbringing, her ambitions, her fears of being overlooked because of who she was and where she came from. Nathaniel didn't interrupt. He respected her story. That respect slowly turned into admiration. They met again and again, but as their bond grew, so did the pressure from the outside world. Whispers followed them. People questioned Nathaniel's interest. Some assumed Amara was chasing wealth. Others doubted she belonged in his world at all. Amara felt the weight of it. One night, after attending a formal dinner with Nathaniel, she stood alone in his penthouse, staring out at the city lights. She felt out of place in the luxury, surrounded by glass walls and silence. "I don't think I belong here," she finally said. Nathaniel turned to her. "Why? Because the world doesn't see me the way it sees you?" she replied quietly. and I don't want to lose myself trying to fit into a life that wasn't built for me. Nathaniel stepped closer. I didn't build this life to impress the world, he said. I built it to be free. And freedom means choosing who you stand beside. Amara's heart trembled, but fear still lingered. This was only the beginning. Love had entered her life, but so had judgment, sacrifice, and choices that would test everything she believed about herself, and the world was about to make her prove that she deserved not just his love but her own. Placed beside him, Amara left the penthouse that night with her thoughts tangled between hope and fear. The city felt different as she walked to her bus stop, the same streets she had known for years now seeming strangely unfamiliar. She replayed Nathaniel's words again and again, wondering if she was brave enough to believe them. For most of her life, survival had been her focus, not love, not luxury, and certainly not a future beside a man whose life was scrutinized by the public. Yet something about him felt real in a way she hadn't experienced before. In the days that followed, Amara tried to return to her routine. She woke before sunrise, prepared her meals carefully, and went to work with the same professionalism she always carried. But her mind drifted. During meetings, she caught herself imagining what it would be like to build something of her own, to be seen not just as capable, but as worthy. Nathaniel called her one afternoon asking how her day had been. The simplicity of the question caught her off guard. No one with his status had ever cared about the small details of her life. They began seeing each other more regularly, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just long walks where they talked about everything and nothing. Nathaniel shared stories of his early struggles, the loneliness that followed his success, and the constant suspicion he faced from people who only saw his wealth. Amara realized that, despite their differences, they both understood what it meant to be judged before being known. But not everyone welcomed their growing closeness. At one event, a woman approached Amara with a polite smile that barely hid her disapproval. She complimented Amara's dress, then casually asked how long she planned to enjoy the experience. The words stung. Amara smiled back, refusing to let her see the hurt, but the message was clear. To some, she was temporary, an outsider. Even Nathaniel's inner circle raised quiet concerns. Friends warned him to be careful, hinting that Amara might not understand the pressures of his world. When he told Amara about it, expecting anger, she surprised him with her calm. "They're protecting what they know," she said softly. "I've been doing that my whole life." Still, the weight of judgment grew heavier. One evening, Amara overheard coworkers whispering about her. They spoke of luxury cars, designer gifts, and assumed intentions. None of it was true, but the assumptions cut deeply. She questioned herself more than ever, wondering if loving Nathaniel meant constantly defending her integrity. Nathaniel noticed the change. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the hesitation in her voice. One night, as they sat quietly, he reached for her hand. "I don't want this to hurt you," he said. "But I don't want to lose you either." Amara squeezed his hand, feeling the truth settle in her chest. Loving him would not be easy. It would demand courage, self-worth, and the strength to stand firm when the world tried to push her aside. As she leaned her head against his shoulder, she knew one thing for certain. This story was no longer just about a black woman and a millionaire. It was about two people standing at the edge of something powerful, knowing that once they stepped forward, there would be no turning back. And that realization marked the true beginning of everything that was yet to come. As Amara rode the bus home that night, she watched her reflection flicker in the dark window, barely recognizing the woman she was becoming. She was no longer just surviving. She was choosing love even when it came wrapped in fear, choosing self-respect even when the world doubted her place. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by limits or apologies. Whatever lay ahead, criticism, sacrifice, or joy, she promised herself one thing. She would walk into it with her head held high, not as someone lucky to be chosen, but as a woman who knew her worth and refused to let anyone define it for her. Amara had always believed that love should feel safe, but as her relationship with Nathaniel deepened, she realized that safety did not always mean comfort. Sometimes it meant standing still while the ground beneath you shifted. The more visible they became together, the more the world seemed determined to remind her that she did not fit the picture it had drawn for him. Cameras began to follow Nathaniel everywhere, and by extension, they followed her too. At first, she tried to ignore it, keeping her eyes forward and her posture calm, but the comments online found their way to her eventually. Strangers debated her worth, questioned her intentions, and dissected her appearance as if she were a public object instead of a human being. Nathaniel tried to shield her from it. He limited interviews, avoided public appearances, and reminded her daily that none of it mattered to him. But Amara could feel the pressure pressing in from all sides. At work, her supervisors suddenly treated her differently. Some were overly kind, as if she might break, while others grew distant, clearly uncomfortable with her growing visibility. She overheard a senior manager once whisper that she would probably quit soon anyway. That night, Amara cried alone in her apartment, not because she believed them, but because she was tired of proving herself over and over again. The real test came when Nathaniel invited her to meet his mother. Eleanor Cross lived in a quiet, gated neighborhood far from the city, in a house that reflected old money and older traditions. She greeted Amara politely, but without warmth. Her eyes lingered too long, assessing everything from Amara's posture to her speech. Dinner was formal, controlled, and heavy with unspoken judgment. Eleanor spoke fondly of Nathaniel's childhood friends, most of whom came from similar backgrounds, subtly reminding Amara that this family had expectations. At one point, Eleanor asked, "Do you think you're prepared for the attention that comes with being associated with my son?" Amara paused, then answered honestly, "I don't think anyone is ever fully prepared. But I know who I am, and I know why I'm here." The room fell quiet. Later that evening, Eleanor pulled Nathaniel aside. She warned him gently, but firmly, that life with Amara would be complicated. She spoke of public image, social backlash, and the possibility of regret. Nathaniel listened, then told her something she hadn't expected. "I've lived a life built on expectations," he said. "For once, I want to build it on truth." When they left, Amara sat silently in the car, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Nathaniel reached for her, but she pulled away slightly, not from him, but from the moment. "She doesn't approve," Amara said quietly. "She doesn't decide," Nathaniel replied. But Amara knew better. Approval shaped doors, conversations, and opportunities, and the lack of it could close them just as easily. Weeks later, a major business magazine published a feature on Nathaniel's personal life. Though Amara's name was not mentioned, the implications were clear. The article framed her as a distraction, an unexpected complication in the life of a disciplined investor. The words were carefully chosen, but the message was sharp. Nathaniel was furious. Amara was numb. That night, she told him she needed space. "I don't want to be the reason people question your judgment," she said. "Or your success." Nathaniel looked at her as if she had wounded him deeply. "You're not a reason. You're my choice." "But choices have consequences," she replied. "And I've lived my whole life carrying the weight of other people's assumptions. I don't know if I can do it again at this scale." They argued for the first time, not loudly but painfully. Every word was honest, and every truth felt sharp. When Amara left, Nathaniel did not stop her. He knew she needed to decide for herself. Days turned into weeks. Amara immersed herself in work, pushing herself harder than ever. She pitched an idea she had been sitting on for years, a boutique event company that focused on inclusive luxury, celebrating cultures and stories often overlooked. To her surprise, the proposal gained interest. For the first time, people listened to her without attaching Nathaniel's name to hers. Meanwhile, Nathaniel struggled in his own silence. Without Amara, his success felt hollow. Meetings blurred together, and the praise he received felt emptier than ever. He realized that the world he had built was impressive but incomplete. Love had shown him something money never could: meaning. Their paths crossed again at a community fundraiser months later. Amara stood confidently on stage, speaking about her new company and its mission. Nathaniel watched from the back of the room, struck by the woman she had become. She was radiant, not because of what she wore, but because she stood firmly in her purpose. After the event, he approached her. "You did this on your own," he said, pride and longing in his voice. "I needed to know I could," Amara replied. They walked together, talking carefully at first, then more freely. Amara admitted that stepping away had been painful but necessary. She needed to love herself fully before standing beside someone whose life invited constant scrutiny. Nathaniel listened, then said, "I don't want a partner who hides behind me. I want one who stands with me. And you've proven you can stand anywhere." Their reconciliation was not dramatic. It was deliberate, built on respect rather than desperation. But the world was not done testing them. When news of their reunion surfaced, backlash intensified. Investors questioned Nathaniel's focus. Social media erupted with opinions that ranged from subtle prejudice to open hostility. Amara faced racism and sexism more openly than ever before. Yet this time she did not shrink. She spoke when necessary, stayed silent when wiser, and leaned on her own growing success for strength. One evening, after a particularly difficult week, Nathaniel took Amara to a quiet place overlooking the city. There were no cameras, no audience, just the two of them. "I know loving me hasn't been easy," he said, "and I won't pretend it ever will be. But I want a life where we face this together, not apart." Amara looked out at the lights below, remembering the girl she once was, riding the bus with dreams she barely dared to name. She thought of the woman she had become, standing firm in her worth. "I don't need your world to accept me," she said. "I just need to know that in your world I'm not a compromise." Nathaniel took her hand. "You're not. You're my future." As he knelt before her, the city seemed to hold its breath. The ring he offered was simple, elegant, and intentional, much like the love they had built. Amara felt fear, yes, but she also felt ready. She said yes, knowing that the final test was still ahead. The wedding, the public judgment, the merging of two very different worlds. Love had brought them this far, but commitment would demand even more. And with that promise, they stepped into the most challenging chapter yet. Determined to write it on their own terms, the engagement changed everything overnight. What had once been speculation turned into headline news, and Amara woke up to messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Some were supportive, proud of how far she had come. Others were curious in a way that felt invasive, asking questions that crossed invisible boundaries. She learned quickly that being engaged to a man like Nathaniel meant sharing her life with strangers, who felt entitled to every detail. Wedding planners, stylists, and public relations consultants filled Nathaniel's schedule, each offering advice on how the ceremony should look, who should be invited, and what image they should project. Amara listened patiently, then quietly insisted on having her own voice. She refused to be dressed like a symbol instead of a bride, or to erase her roots to make others comfortable. Every decision became an act of self-definition. Nathaniel's mother requested a private meeting. This time, Eleanor's tone was different, less guarded, more conflicted. She admitted her fears, not just about society, but about losing her son to a life she didn't recognize. Amara responded without anger, explaining that loving Nathaniel did not mean changing him, but standing beside him as he grew. The conversation ended without full agreement, but with something new: respect. As plans moved forward, threats and hateful messages appeared online, testing Amara's strength. Some nights, doubt crept back in. But she reminded herself of the woman who had built a company from nothing, who had walked away when she needed to, and returned stronger. On a quiet evening before another long day of preparations, Amara and Nathaniel sat together, hands intertwined. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling steady. Whatever the world decided to throw at them, she knew now that love did not require shrinking. It required standing tall together, unafraid of who they were or where they came from. The wedding day arrived with a quiet kind of gravity, the kind that settles in your chest before something life-changing happens. Amara woke before sunrise, sitting alone by the window of the hotel suite, watching the city slowly come to life. She thought about the long road that had led her here the early mornings, The whispers, the doubts, the strength it took to keep walking forward when it would have been easier to step back. This day was not just about marrying Nathaniel. It was about claiming her place without apology. The venue overlooked the ocean, chosen not for its status, but for its openness. Amara had insisted on that. She wanted the sky above them and no walls close enough to feel confining. As she prepared, surrounded by a small group of women who truly knew her, she felt calm. Not nervous. Not overwhelmed. Ready. The dress she wore was elegant and understated, blending modern design with subtle details inspired by her heritage. It was not meant to impress strangers. It was meant to reflect her truth. Outside, guests arrived from different worlds: business leaders, old friends, family members, people who had supported them quietly, and others who were still unsure of what they were witnessing. Conversations hummed with curiosity and expectation. Some eyes still carried judgment, but many carried something else now: respect. Amara had not just endured the spotlight. She had reshaped it. Nathaniel stood waiting, hands folded, breathing steadily. For all his confidence in boardrooms and negotiations, this moment humbled him. He had faced loss, failure, and success, but nothing had required as much courage as choosing love so publicly and so deliberately. When Amara appeared, walking toward him with her head held high, he felt something settle inside him. This was not a risk. This was home. As they stood together, the officiant spoke about partnership, about choosing one another not just in ease but in resistance. Amara listened carefully, every word landing deeply. When it was her turn to speak, her voice did not shake. "I stand here as a woman who knows her worth," she said. "Not because of who I am marrying, but because of who I have become. I choose you, Nathaniel, not as a refuge, but as a partner. Not as a symbol, but as a man who sees me fully." There was a pause, then Nathaniel spoke. "I choose you because you challenged me to live honestly," he said. "Because you never asked me to save you, only to walk beside you. You didn't enter my world to be protected. You entered it to stand equal. And that has changed me forever." When they exchanged vows, something shifted in the air. Not everything disappeared: the prejudice, the assumptions, the noise, but it lost its power. Applause followed, genuine and loud, as if the crowd understood that they were witnessing more than a wedding. They were witnessing a declaration. The days after the ceremony were quieter, but no less significant. Media coverage was relentless, but different now. Stories focused less on controversy and more on Amara's achievements, her business, her voice. She was invited to speak on panels, to mentor young women, to share her journey not as inspiration, but as proof. She accepted some invitations and declined others, choosing carefully how she used her platform. Nathaniel, too, changed. He restructured parts of his company to align with values he once kept separate from business. Diversity initiatives were no longer symbolic. They were intentional. He credited Amara openly, not as influence but as partnership. Still, challenges remained. At a high-profile corporate event months later, a senior executive dismissed Amara's ideas mid-conversation, assuming she was there only as Nathaniel's wife. Amara waited calmly, then spoke with precision and clarity, dismantling the executive's argument and presenting a solution that earned immediate attention. The room shifted. Nathaniel said nothing. He didn't need to. She had already spoken for herself. Later that night, alone together, Amara laughed softly. "They still don't get it," she said. "They will," Nathaniel replied. "And if they don't, that's their loss." Amara's company flourished, becoming known for events that celebrated stories often ignored. She hired women who reminded her of herself years ago: talented, overlooked, hungry for opportunity. She paid them well, mentored them personally, and reminded them that success did not require erasing who they were. Nathaniel supported her without overshadowing her, learning when to step back and when to stand beside her. Their marriage was not perfect, but it was honest. They argued, learned, and adjusted, always returning to the same understanding. Neither of them was an accessory to the other's life. One evening, years later, Amara stood in the kitchen of their home, watching Nathaniel prepare dinner. The moment reminded her of the fear she once carried, The uncertainty she felt standing in spaces she wasn't sure she belonged in. She realized then how far she had come. Not into his world, but into her own. "You okay?" Nathaniel asked, noticing her watching him. "I'm more than okay," she replied. "I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Their story did not end with a wedding or a ring. It continued in everyday choices: to speak up, to listen, to resist shrinking. Amara became a symbol not because she sought to be one, but because she refused to disappear. She showed the world that love does not elevate you above yourself. It should meet you where you stand and walk with you forward. And as she moved through life, confident and unafraid, one truth remained clear. She was never chosen because of wealth or status. She was chosen because she chose herself first.